Soon enough, he found light at the end of the endless cavern system. Hope! He had to act quick by collapsing a big boulder into a dead end using the sonic multi-tool before the staff can catch up with him. But standing right behind him was something marvelous, an upside-down pyramid-like city. Just then he heard the cries of Olivia by his left side. He turned his head, only to see the park employees holding hostage the Smiths. The Wandering had to think quickly as he throttled his firearm and told everyone to run to the weird upside-down pyramid city. It was a long journey, but at least the employees were kinda slow. They ran until they found a sort of a metal plate with 6 light bulbs attached all around. The Wandering correctly deduced that this is how you get to the city above. So he pointed his sonic multi-tool up and down, after which the bulbs started to glow green, after which the platform went up, and the closest spike in the city above gulped the family and its alien whole. Artem Pistonov, The Wandering Stories, Atlantica. The contents of the city were quite irregular. Firstly, the gravity here was artificial, because as they entered the city, they got stuck to the ceiling. But beyond that, the city itself had pointy triangular skyscrapers as the only buildings. The color wasn't the best either. It's just dark blue over the sky, with flickering lime green lights on some of the buildings. Snoggern surprisingly were really good scientists, but not good builders, the Wandering remarked. Suddenly they heard the elevator that they used go down, and the squad of the park employees. The Smiths had to run fast. They all ran through many streets until the Smiths and the Wandering found a cabin-like structure near the outskirts of the metallic city. As they walked in, they felt a sense that something was wrong here. So they started to explore it. But as they were exploring, the park employees found them. "Scatter!" said the Wandering, and pointed his sonic multi-tool at the guns. And so they ran some more, but now alone and in different directions. Took them a while to regroup, but at least they were unharmed. "Right," said the Wandering. What we need is a plan." "Well, what kind of plan?" said Michael. "I got one. Get back to your weird condensed time machine and get out of here," reported Julia. "That's the problem, miss. We're underground and surrounded in an ancient place at the edge of the universe. We need to somehow get past the slam knights back to the surface because our current slow predators have had to somehow get here, right?" asked the Wandering. "I have a plan," yelled Olivia. "What if we dress like them? I think I heard from Daddy, but employees don't hurt each other." "Dear, don't be rude, but they probably noticed that we're different," said Michael. The Wandering answered to their concerns with "My dear chaps, what we've going up against is very gullible, because they haven't invented lying." Julia retorted with a question of how they didn't invent lying. It's like one of the things we learned to do. "Well, just because you invented lying as a survival instinct doesn't mean that everyone else invented it," reported the Wandering. Their plan was simple. Knock out 2 employees, steal their attire, and sneak into the main facility with the captured. And get out. The plan was basically foolproof, except for one thing. Who will be who? Obviously the Wandering knows so much that he has to be one of the employees. But who should be 2? Julia Smith, too nervous. Olivia Smith, too young, plus Julia is very protective of her only daughter. So, Michael it is. Stealing the suits wasn't quite hard, but the hard part was to pretend to be a part of the employee group. So, who are y'all? Asked one of the Slam Knights. The Wandering had to smooth out the situation. We're here because of the upper people. Yes, because they wanted us to do stuff, important stuff here. Yes. Some other Slam Knights asked, which upper person? The Wandering said, that one, and pointed his left arse somewhere upwards. Every Slam Knight turned their eyes there, after which the Wandering and Michael knocked them out unconscious and ran with the women, two of the smiths. The road back to the surface wasn't exactly hard to find, but was hard to enter without the sonic multi-tool. Where the exit led was quite intriguing. It seemed to be a corridor with hot pink walls. After walking around for a couple of minutes, our family team understood that this isn't just a hot pink labyrinth. It was a hot pink facility of the park above the strange pyramid that unintentionally became a labyrinth. The only reason they called it an unintentional is because of the decaying employees and scraps of paper that describe being lost in the facility of this happy land. On the bright side now, everybody had employee disguises. Now, wandering the empty, disgusting pink walls, full of putrid, decaying faces, they walked until they saw what seemed to be an entry to an auditorium. A big, hot pink auditorium, where the audience was below the stage. But the most depressing thing were the seats, or lack thereof. Curiosity got the better of them, so they decided to snoop for a little in that room. But as they entered, an army full of different creatures entered with the employee uniform, just like the Smiths. Strangely, most of the aliens were green slug-like creatures, with one eye, no lower jaw, and purple tentacle-like appendages coming from the roofs of their mouths. Most others were either variation of slug-like, dull pink columns with eyes, or zaffre arches with what seemed to be random tubes made out of different metals just sticking out of their bodies, not really connected to anything in particular. As everybody settled in, the lights dimmed, and a strange glow like a shiny diamond. An approximate human form walked out on the stage. It had a black suit with a black tie, black pants, black shirt, and black button-up jacket. But not just his clothes were black. Instead of fingers, he had 4 crow beaks. He had dark grey horns, sharp like garlic, where eyes should be, and his skin was bordering on grey and black. His 2 arms were like tree branches, long, slender, and diluting. His 5 legs were flat and long. His voice came out from his crow beaks that were talking in unison. "Our mission is still ongoing," the black thing started. "Smimong, how many ships have we gotten since the last 10 visits?" It asked. One of the dull pink columns with eyes answered. "Only 23 ships and 11 pods. Only 11 pods? How are we supposed to fly off into the universe with that?" asked the dark creature on stage. "If we can't get 1,000,000 ships and 1,000,000 pods, we won't be able to get out of here. Any other disappointing news? What about Atlantica?" Still unknown, one of the Zaffre archers said. Just at that moment, the Wandering had heard enough. He tapped on the shoulders of Michael and told him that they should head out. Once they got out, they took off their employee suits. You know, the whole stealing ships stuff that I heard about wasn't quite nice of them. I mean, to some, the ships are basically their homes, so by taking away their homes, they most likely make a rightful ship owners homeless. So I recommend you go back to my ship whilst I get to meet the Jark chap. And so the Canadian family parted ways with their domesticated alien. Getting back to the Timey was hard to say the least. Firstly, they had to escape the hot pink labyrinth, full of the stench of decay. They wandered for seemed like hours, but they finally got out the hot pink nightmare, only to be surrounded by security. Whilst all that was happening, the Wandering decided to get back to the underground pyramid city. He put his hands into his pockets and started walking. He passed several corpses whilst going back. But after he got there, he saw something rather intriguing. A search party. But for who or for what was the search? He decided to follow them silently and see what they were up to. That was kind of hard to do, not only because he was somewhere around 190 centimeters, plus he had a whole white lab coat tucked out like a sore thumb in the dark blue and green setting. Plus, the search party was fully made of modified ZK-56 search droids with beige cloaks, which is weird. These drones don't need any clothing. In the place where the Wandering comes from, these things were called all-seeing a bad word. Their tree-spiral, dull green legs walked rather slowly. Their also dull green claw arms were slightly raised in case of an attack. Sensors were glowing red, and their tornado heads were spinning at ridiculously high speeds. That meant that whatever they were after was not just serious business, but also the top priority. It was both boring and scary, quietly following all these all-seeing sensor heads. After what seemed to be 30 minutes and 40 seconds, they all got to the center of the upside-down city. There was a statue in the center. It was a bug-like creature with a giant, enormous, throbbing head. One of the Slam Knights. On the pedestal beneath the statue was enough space for even the biggest human to walk in. There was also a dark green button on the pedestal that looked like it was made to work for CK-56's claw, and a less green ZK-56 showed the upper part of his claw to the thing, and an arch-like hole appeared in the pedestal. After all of the drones walked in, the Wandering, being curious, decided to walk in with them. There were dark grey stairs that led to what seemed to be a core, an intoxicated light green power core of the city. Power core that used to provide enough energy and electricity that some residences had to use energy 24/7 just so that the core wouldn't explode. But this one was fully dead, with some sort of rusty mold covering the core, which made it scarier somehow. I mean, honestly, a giant glowing lime green cube covered in orange mold, with 4 stabilizer sparks on top and 4 below, being the only things that suspended the cube in midair. But that's the half of the trouble. The drones started to attach their clothes to the suspending spikes. As they did that, footsteps could be heard. The core's glow started to dull, darken, and the footsteps got louder. The dark thing from before walked from the shadows, most likely to see what the drones were doing. "Status report!" shouted the creature from its finger beaks. The cube responding, stating, "Power 88%, breakability 50.79%, intruder 1. Somehow the Wandering knew the intruder part was about him. He tried to play it cool and hide, but sadly the black thing still noticed him, even though he was well hidden in the darkest of corners. Well, who do we have here?" asked the thing, wondering, not understanding the fact that it was a rhetorical question asked. Nobody's here." "Well, if you're saying that nobody's here, then who's answering my rhetorical question?" "Nobody, trust me." "Are you sure?" The black thing started to come closer. "Indeed," said the Wandering. "Then explain to me this." The black thing pointed with one of its finger beaks directly at the Wandering. In response, the Wandering pulled out his sonic multi-tool and pointed at the core cube. The multi-tool activated and bleeped a bit at the cube. "Self-destruction activated." The cube screeched. The cube started to glow red and orange in 2-second intervals, and the room started to shake violently. Every organic thing, just the black thing and the Wandering, started to panic. "What did you just do?" the thing shouted. "I don't know," said the Wandering, squirmed. "You doomed us all?" "I am terribly sorry. I didn't know it would react this badly." The two beings rushed to the exit, trying to outrun each other. Once they ran out of the hidden room within the statue, they had only one thing to do: survive. The core cube was a powerful source, and if it were to explode, it would cause a major explosion, sometimes powerful enough to deorbit a moon or two. The two ran out of the city as fast as they could, only to end up in the disgusting hot pink maze filled with corpses. "So, sir, what with this mage-like structure?" asked the one. "Well, to catch beings like you," said the black thing, pointing with one of its beaks at him. "Really? What's with the corpses?" asked the Wandering questions. "They were traitors." They were still running. Strangely, nobody was just walking or anything, as if everybody already evacuated, even though there were no sirens. Just then they ran past a jail-like place. It was dark grey rather than the disgusting hot pink. Inside the jail there were the Smiths. When they supposed to be in the timey? Guess they got caught. Doesn't matter, they must be safe. With a bit of from the multi-tool, they were saved. But the countdown now was far closer to destruction than before, so the Wandering and the Smiths had to run. And just in the nick of time, they made it. The Wandering quickly rushed the console and activated the ship. As they dematerialized, the giant asteroid on which the park got blown to molecules. "Well, that was quite strange. Where next?" asked the Wandering. "Home!" yelled Julia. "We want home!" "All right then. It is." Then the timing materialized. They got out on it to see in some sort of light grey room in space. Casting: the narrator, Artem Pistonov. Storyboard: Artem Pistonov. Artem Pistonov. Artem Pistonov. Artist: Artem Pistonov. Sound operator: Artem Pistonov. Characters owned by Artem Pistonov. Thanks to Artem Pistonov. Special thanks comes to viewer RT8 Productions.